What if the most dangerous weapon in an interstellar war wasn't a bomb or a battleship, but a medic with a heartbeat full of defiance? She was captured, outnumbered, and alone. Yet she didn't break. Instead, she healed her enemies, rewrote their rules, and planted a seed of rebellion with every life she saved. They called her the Crimson Pact, and she turned a galaxy at war into a battlefield for compassion. This isn't just a story about war. It's about the one person brave enough to fight it with mercy. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move toward this wonderful story. The stars outside the Varnorian dreadnought shimmered like cold, distant eyes. Commander Bratek stood at the observation deck, arms crossed behind his back, watching as another human vessel drifted helplessly through space. The Dominion had conquered 17 systems with efficiency and silence. Every species they'd encountered had either submitted or been erased. The humans, fragile and slow, were expected to follow the same fate. This ship had been hit during a fleet clash near the outer rim of the Varnorian-claimed sectors. It now floated in the void, dark and lifeless. No distress signals, no movement, just silence. Bratek turned to his boarding squad. No mercy, we take what's useful. Dispose of the rest. Inside the ruined transport, the smell of burnt metal and smoke clung to the air. The gravity was failing in pulses and lights flickered, casting strange shadows through the corridors. Most of the crew were already dead, bodies slumped in chairs or curled in corners where they'd tried to shield themselves from decompression. But something made Bratek pause outside the ship's medical bay. There was movement, just a flicker. He motioned his troops to hold back. Through the cracked door, he could see a human woman crouched over another body. Her hands moved with speed and focus, even though her own suit was leaking oxygen. Her patient was clearly beyond help, chest torn open and barely breathing, yet she kept working. The display on her wrist showed critical atmosphere levels. She had minutes to live. Maybe less. Bratek stepped inside, his voice calm and cold through the translator. Step away from the body. You are now property of the Varnorian Dominion. The woman looked up slowly. Her face was pale, streaked with blood from her nose, a sign of pressure trauma. Her eyes, however, were clear and sharp. She didn't plead. She didn't even flinch. She wore a white uniform with a red cross across the chest. Odd markings. The Varnorians didn't understand yet. I'm not property, she said quietly, and my patient isn't dead yet. Bratek stared. He had never heard a human speak with such calm defiance. Your transport is destroyed. You are alone. Surrender. She didn't move. Instead, she held up a small device. Your soldiers, breathing masks. Did your protocol account for the methane levels in the ship's systems? Bratek frowned. Methane? Their atmosphere filters were calibrated for human environments, but only on general settings. Your membranes are starting to discolor, she said. Signs of methane poisoning, I can fix it, but only if you let me help. One of the Varnorian soldiers coughed. Another staggered, clutching his throat. The air filters weren't keeping up. Bratek hesitated, then gave the order. Remove helmets. Watch the human. The woman grabbed a canister from a wall compartment and sprayed a fine mist. The burning in their throats eased instantly. Soldiers who had looked ready to collapse straightened in surprise. Bratek glanced at the readings. The levels had stabilized. She had told the truth. You will live, she said. Now let me finish. Bratek allowed it, though every instinct told him to arrest her immediately. He watched as she returned to her work with quiet focus. 20 minutes later, the patient, someone who should have been long gone, was breathing steadily. It wasn't just skill. It was something else. A kind of stubbornness. A refusal to give up even when logic said otherwise. They took both humans prisoner. That was protocol. But Bratek added something to his report. This medic knew things their own healers didn't. She had value. And perhaps danger. Her name, they learned later, was Nia Tellis, combat medic of Earth's Coalition Defense Force. She didn't scream or beg or curse. She asked for equipment. She asked for names of the wounded. She asked questions they weren't used to hearing, about why certain soldiers didn't receive the same care, why resources were distributed by rank instead of need. She was sent to the Varnorian Medical Research Facility on Solaris Station. Bratek was reassigned to oversee her. He had expected resistance, maybe an escape attempt. Instead, she treated minor wounds without complaint. Burns, cuts, sprains, injuries to workers the Varnorian system barely acknowledged. She worked like every life mattered. One day, Bratek asked her, "Why do you try so hard for people who mean so little to us?" Her answer was simple. "Because they're in pain." He didn't respond. He didn't know how. No Varnorian had ever said that before. Pain to them was just a biological response. Treating it was only worthwhile if the person had military or scientific value, but Naya didn't think like that, and the staff began to notice her calm voice in the halls, the way she treated every patient like a person. It unsettled many, confused more, and intrigued a few. Whispers began to travel through the station, past commanders and clerks alike. They called her the quiet flame at first because she didn't shout, didn't threaten, but she burned through the old ways slowly, reshaping them in silence. Bratek watched, day after day, trying to understand her. And then came the accident in the lab. Fire, screams, smoke rolling through sealed doors. The regular medics were too slow. The station's best scientist was already gone, but 3 more lay dying. And it was Naya who stepped into the chaos and changed everything. But that, Bratek realized, was just the beginning. The alarms had barely stopped when Naya Tellis stepped into the ruined lab. Smoke coiled through the air like dark fingers, curling around shattered glass and twisted metal. 3 Varnorian scientists were lying in pools of blood and chemical waste, moaning softly, or silent altogether. The others, those unhurt, stood, frozen as if unsure whether to run or help. Medical teams had arrived, but they hesitated. Bratek, standing in the middle of it all, turned to Naya. She was calm, her eyes already scanning the damage, her body moving with quiet urgency. "You shouldn't be here," said Chief Technician Larek, glaring at her. "This is restricted." "She's already here," Bratek answered flatly. "Let her work." And so she did. Naya knelt beside one of the injured scientists, his breathing erratic, eyes wide with panic. She checked his pulse, examined his wounds, and started giving instructions. Her voice was soft but firm, and to everyone's surprise, the Varnorian medics began following her lead. She told one to apply pressure with a cloth, another to prepare an injection, and a third to stabilize the airflow. They obeyed, not because of orders, but because something in her tone made them believe she knew exactly what she was doing. The first scientist survived. The second, barely clinging to life, responded to her strange mix of human and alien techniques. The third had no heartbeat at first, but Naya didn't give up. She tried a risky method she later described as a field resuscitation, a human emergency procedure that looked more like desperation than medicine. But it worked. 3 lives saved, 1 lost. The Varnorian staff stood in stunned silence. Their best methods hadn't been enough. Naya had stepped in and performed what they thought impossible. Some called it luck, others called it dangerous. Bratek, however, felt something shift, not just in the air, but in himself. He'd started the day certain she was a useful tool. Now he wasn't sure what she was. Back at the station's infirmary, the mood was different. Naya no longer treated only the lower ranks. Higher-ranking officials, once too proud to be seen by a human, now quietly requested her help. She never refused, but she didn't treat them any differently than she did the sanitation workers or the maintenance crew. For her, the rules didn't change based on who someone was. It confused people. It also fascinated them. Bratek watched her one evening, treating a technician with a crushed hand. The injury was simple, something most Varnorian medics would have, dismissed or treated with quick regeneration gel. But Naya took her time. She cleaned the wound with care, realigned the bones manually, stitched it herself. That was unnecessary, Bratek said, stepping closer. Our technology can finish the rest. Yes, but it wouldn't fix the pain, she replied, not looking up. He's replaceable, Bratek said more softly now. Maybe, she said, but right now he's hurting, and I can help. Bratek didn't know what to say. The more he watched her, the more he realized she wasn't just saving lives. She was changing how people thought about life. Small changes at first. Medics began to ask questions. Soldiers spoke about her in the mess halls. Some of the younger staff even started mimicking her techniques. A few wore symbols they said represented medical neutrality, something Naya had once mentioned in passing. High Command was unaware for now. Bratek didn't report every detail. Part of him still believed she could be controlled, that she could be useful if guided properly. But another part, the part that woke him at night, wondered if he had already lost control. Then came the day Naya asked to set up a teaching session. They keep asking me how I do what I do, she said. Simply, why not show them? Bratek hesitated. You're a prisoner. I'm a medic, she said, and teaching people to save lives isn't a threat. Is it? Against his better judgment, he agreed. The small room she used quickly became overcrowded. Varnorian medics, squeezed in shoulder to shoulder. Some came from nearby outposts. A few of the guards even sat at the back, pretending not to listen. She taught basic battlefield techniques, how to make splints from toolkits, how to stop blood loss with tape and pressure, how to recognize signs of stress no scanner could detect. What amazed Bratek most wasn't the techniques, though. It was the way she spoke. She told stories, described the people she'd saved. She made the lessons about empathy, about thinking beyond just rank or order. She made medicine feel human. That night, Bratek sat in his quarters, staring at a report he couldn't bring himself to send. It was supposed to summarize her progress. Instead, it read like a warning. He couldn't explain it, not even to himself. Naya Tellis had never once threatened anyone. She never disobeyed orders. She never tried to escape. And yet somehow, she was changing everything. Quietly, patiently, like water reshaping stone. He thought of the scientists she'd saved who now asked for her opinion on research, the guards who laughed around her like she was one of them, the young medic who had whispered to Bratek earlier, "She makes us feel like our work matters." Bratek closed the file without signing it. Something was happening, and he had a growing feeling that it wouldn't stop, not even if Naya was removed. The problem wasn't her presence. It was her example, and for the first time in his career, Commander Bratek didn't know whether that was a reason to stop her, or to protect her. The moon of Kareth's Divide was nothing like Solaris Station, where the station had cool lights, organized corridors, and humming machines. Kareth was all smoke, mud, and screams. The ground shook regularly from artillery strikes. The air smelled of metal, fuel, and fear. It was a place where medics burned out quickly, and soldiers rarely lived long enough to miss them. When Naya Tellis stepped off the Varnorian transport and into the chaos of the forward command post, her boots sunk immediately into dark, sticky soil. She said nothing. She just looked around. Field General Drovan met her with a frown deep enough to crack stone. "This is the miracle worker?" he asked Bratek, voice heavy with disbelief. "She looks like a civilian." "She's not," Bratek replied, "and she's here under my authority. High Command has approved her role during this trial." Naya didn't argue. She walked straight toward the nearest tent, a medical bay packed with groaning soldiers. Inside, the scene was grim. Supplies were running low. Triage decisions were based on rank, not survival chance. One medic was trying to stabilize a captain with multiple organ failures, while several lower-rank soldiers with treatable wounds bled out in silence nearby. Naya didn't ask permission. She knelt beside one of the injured, examined him quickly, then barked orders to the stunned Varnorian staff. He needs compression now. You, tourniquet, you, start a fluid line, move. Her voice cut through the noise like a scalpel. For a moment nobody moved, then unsure why they obeyed. Bratek watched it happen again. The same shift he'd seen back on Solaris. Naya didn't speak with rank. She spoke with certainty. Not everyone trusted her, but they listened because she made sense. She made people feel like they could actually do something to save lives. Hours passed. Wounded kept pouring in. A new chemical agent deployed by human forces hit the southern perimeter. Soldiers arrived choking, coughing, some unconscious. The Varnorian medical chief immediately declared the zone off limits, standard procedure, for unknown toxins. We cannot risk contamination, he said. We must seal it off. They'll die, Naya snapped. We can't just leave them. The chief folded his arms. Protocol is clear. Naya turned to Bratek. I've studied human weapons. Let me at least try. You want results? Let me go in. Bratek hesitated. Every rule said no. Every regulation said she should remain inside the containment zone. But he had seen her in action. And deep down, he knew she was their best chance. You'll be escorted, he said at last. One move out of line and understood, she said. No fear, just purpose. The scene at the southern trench was a nightmare. Soldiers lay gasping in the dirt. The strange chemical had turned their breathing membranes purple, swollen shut. Naya moved among them with speed and grace, her scanner buzzing as she collected samples. She worked in silence, then mixed something in a vial from her portable kit. A fine mist sprayed over one soldier's face. Within seconds, his breathing steadied. Bratek watched from a few steps away. Is it a cure? It's a counteragent, she replied. Temporary protection. Enough to get them out alive. Over the next hour, she repeated the treatment for every exposed soldier. When they returned to base, medics and officers alike stared. Nobody had expected survivors. Nobody expected one human to make that kind of difference. Even General Droven couldn't ignore it. Your action saved 2 squads, he said, begrudging respect in his tone. Perhaps you're more than a tool. I'm not your tool at all, Naya replied calmly. I'm a medic. That doesn't change, no matter who I'm helping. Word of her actions spread fast. Soldiers on both sides began referring to her as the Crimson Pact, a symbol of someone who didn't pick sides when lives were at stake. Requests came in, even from injured human captives, asking for her care. That's when Naya made a bold proposal. I want to create a neutral medical zone, she told Bratek one evening. A place where wounded from both sides can be treated. He stared at her. That's insane. No army would allow it. But they should, she said. And maybe if someone just starts doing it, they will. Bratek thought about everything he'd seen. The lives saved. The order rising from chaos. The respect she earned not by force but through compassion. I'll speak to High Command, he said, though he wasn't sure why he agreed. To his shock, they approved it, with restrictions. Publicly, it was a propaganda tool, a sign that the Dominion could show mercy. Privately, they expected it to fail, but it didn't. A small valley between the front lines was cleared. A white tent was raised, marked with a red symbol borrowed from ancient human times. Naya stood at the entrance, welcoming soldiers from both armies, separating injuries by severity, not allegiance. At first, only the desperate came. Then the curious, then the hopeful. It worked. Slowly, the neutral zone became a place of strange peace. Medics from both sides exchanged ideas, learned new techniques, even laughed over shared mistakes. Bratek visited often. He saw things he never expected. Soldiers helping each other without needing orders. People healing each other without questions. And through it all, Naya kept working. Her hands always stained red, her eyes always calm. She's rewriting the rules, Bratek said one night to himself, and for the first time in his life, he hoped she wouldn't stop. The explosion at the Varnorian command post shook the entire valley. Flames lit up the night sky, and smoke poured into the air like a warning from the stars themselves. Commander Bratek rushed to the scene, shouting orders, his heart pounding harder than it had during any battle. But deep down, he already knew. The neutral medical zone was empty. Naya Tellis was gone. Not just her. 6 human medics had disappeared as well. And most troubling of all, 3 Varnorian medical officers, trained and respected, were missing too. Bratek stood among the ashes of the command tent, his mind racing. This wasn't a retreat. It was an escape, and it was planned. Field General Droven was furious. I warned you. She was planting seeds of rebellion, not medicine. Bratek didn't answer. He was still staring at the empty cots, the packed supply cases, the quietness left behind. There hadn't been panic, no rushed exit. Everything had been cleaned, folded, left with care. That wasn't an act of war. It was a message. 2 days later, they caught one of the fleeing Varnorian medics in the hills beyond the eastern ridge. He didn't resist capture. When questioned, his voice was calm. She didn't order us to leave, he said. We chose to. Droven slammed his fist against the wall. Treason. No, the medic said. Understanding. She showed us what we had become. We save officers, we abandon workers, we treat pain like an obstacle. She reminded us that healing isn't a privilege. It's a responsibility. That word echoed in Bratek's mind. Responsibility. He had lived by duty, followed orders, enforced rules. But he could not deny the truth he'd seen in the valley. Since Naya's arrival, survival rates had improved, morale had risen. And not just because she healed faster or used new tools. She changed something deeper. She made soldiers ask why some lives were worth more than others, why they accepted so much suffering without question. Reports came in from other battle zones, medics using unauthorized treatments, human-inspired ones. Lower-rank soldiers getting the same care as officers, medical teams refusing to leave behind the wounded during retreats. Bratek felt the cracks forming in the Empire's walls. High Command acted fast. Droven was promoted to lead the hunt. Bratek was told to assist. Find the Crimson Pact, they said, end the infection. But it was already too late. The chase led them across 3 star systems. In every outpost Naya had visited, they found the same thing. Order where there had been chaos. Respect where there had been fear. And stories. So many stories. Soldiers who owed her their lives. Medics who followed her teachings. Varnorians and humans who had started working side by side. Not by command, but by choice. Then, finally, on the forest-covered moon of Tyralis, they found her. Bratek entered the clearing expecting a hidden base. What he saw instead left him speechless. It was a full field hospital, not hidden, not armed. Tents stretched across the glade, lit by soft lights. Soldiers lay side by side, human and Varnorian alike, receiving care from a mix of medics. There was no shouting, no violence, only the quiet hum of life being preserved. And standing at the center, like always, was Naya Tellis. She didn't run. She didn't argue. She met Bratek's eyes as his troops surrounded the facility. You've found me, she said simply. Bratek stepped forward, uncertain of what to feel. You're charged with betrayal, sabotage, and spreading rebellion. Is that what healing has become? She asked softly. A crime. You've changed everything, he said. You've broken command. I haven't broken anything, she said. I've reminded people of what they forgot, that every life has value and care should never depend on a uniform. One of the soldiers, Sergeant Horan, a Varnorian, stepped in front of Bratek. She saved my brother, he said, and half this unit. You ordered us to consider service when dealing with prisoners. She's earned more than that. Bratek looked around. These were his people, soldiers he had trained, fought beside, led into war. And now, they stood with her. Not with weapons, but with conviction. High Command would have ordered a purge. He knew that. Burn the camp, capture the medics, erase the evidence. But Bratek had seen too much. He knew the truth now. This wasn't rebellion. It was evolution. What do you want? He asked Naya, voice quiet. A chance to stop this, she said. I don't want a fight, I want peace talks, a ceasefire, medical neutrality. If we start there, maybe we can find something better. Bratek looked up at the stars. He thought of all the lives lost in silence, all the blood spilled for lines on a map, and then he looked at her. This small, determined medic who had changed more with her hands than any weapon ever could. Then let's start something new, he said. Peace didn't happen overnight. The war dragged on for months. But slowly, things changed. Neutral zones spread. Soldiers began refusing to shoot near marked medical tents. Prisoners were exchanged, not executed. Varnorian and human medics began to share knowledge, forming the first interstellar medical union. 5 years later, at a ceremony held beneath the open sky on a peaceful planet, Bratek and Naya stood together as instructors at a new academy for interspecies medicine. The students wore badges of both Earth and Varnoria. None carried weapons. After the speeches, Bratek turned to her. Did you plan all this? From the beginning? Naya smiled. No, I just treated what was in front of me. And what was? That? She looked up at the stars. The most dangerous disease in the galaxy, the belief that some lives matter more than others. And so, beneath the cross of stars, a healer's oath had reshaped the future. Not with war, not with weapons, but with compassion that refused to choose sides.